Kia ora and welcome. This is chapter 16, a video looking at a summary of chapter 16 from the book The Future of Learning. In this chapter we're looking at ideas, and in the last chapter we looked at this notion of building the pit, making sure that the learners have got a good mindset to get into the pit, and when they come into the pit we're prompting them to jump into the pit, in this learning pit, because they want to learn. And so what they're developing as they interrogate what's happened in the prompt itself, they're building knowledge. And knowledge they'll find in all sorts of places and spaces. You know, they'll find some on the internet, they'll find some from each other, they'll find some from books, they'll find some from all over the place. They'll talk to people online and have conversations through blogs, and there's numerous ways they can build this knowledge. But the next part of the process that we're looking at here in this section is looking at how do we take knowledge and turn those into ideas, because that's the next part of the process of learning. So we're unpacking the learning process, and we've got them into the pit, we've got them excited, they've built some knowledge, but really now we want them to interrogate that knowledge. And by interrogating that knowledge, they'll start to build ideas. Now, ideas are defined as a relationship between two or more variables. Now, we introduced the notion of variables earlier on. Variables are things that change. And so we might look at a tree in the autumn and see it loses its leaves. Okay? So when we look at that, there are things that are changing. One is the time of year. The time of year is ticking along. And the other thing that's changing is the tree either has its leaves or doesn't have its leaves. And so there's a relationship between those two things. At a certain point in time, the tree will lose its leaves. And so that is an idea for that tree. So an idea only really associates itself with a single tree, or maybe a couple of trees we might. But the brain at this point in time hasn't actually worked out the overarching pattern to that. They've just got a pattern for a single context, this tree. And so when we look at that tree, we may look at another tree and the same thing happens. We go, goodness me, quite a few trees actually do this, but only if they are deciduous, trees that lose their leaves. And so that starts the journey of that learning journey. But we need to be able to have young people understand what variables are. And they understand it really quickly once we introduce it. I'm always surprised that the big words don't faze children at all. Okay, so using the word variables is quite okay. Things that change. Our brains are focused and do really, really well on things that change and the relationship between those changing things. We map patterns really, really quickly. We just stunners at it. We really, we're the only species with this capability. And we're the only species, that actually does this incredibly well. And the wonderful thing about forming ideas is that it's equitable. Learning the knowledge and remembering it is not equitable. We get a distribution curve. But building ideas, and later on in the next video clip we'll be looking at, building concepts, they are equitable. Young people can come up with ideas just as well as older people. People who were successful in reading and writing and people who were not successful in reading and writing come up with ideas and concepts just as well, as long as they've got access to the knowledge. And this is where the internet is starting to make a significant change in our thinking about learning. In the past, you had to be able to read and write to learn. There was no other way around that other than listening to people. But we had often in our village only a small number of people. So we had limited knowledge access if we couldn't read and write. What has happened with the internet is that it's producing resource in multimedia. So we can watch the video. So our ability or lack of ability to read and write doesn't impede our ability to learn. And this is a huge shift. And we talked about this as our 5th paradigm shift in learning. So the internet came along as our 4th paradigm shift, but the 5th paradigm shift was the multimedia nature of the internet and what that is now allowing us to do. It's allowing us to have options in how we access knowledge. So in this space here, when we're looking at forming ideas, It's the initial space around interrogating what we've observed, asking ourselves lots of good questions. So once again, those question stems on the walls, the verbs, the adverbs, etc. And we need to have our posters on the walls. So you'll notice in the book that we've got a series of posters, and you can download those from the website free of charge. Okay, so you can go to the website, download those posters, and make them into an A1 or an A2 size, put them up on the wall, and keep interrogating which bit of the process of learning are you up to. Now, once you start building an idea, doesn't mean the next thing you do is build a concept. You may actually go back from an idea back to getting more knowledge, because that idea is going, well, what does that mean for the other tree? Therefore, I need more knowledge. So the learning process is not a step-by-step paint-by-numbers exercise. It's a very random process where we're moving from building knowledge to building ideas to building concepts, back to ideas, back to knowledge, across back to concepts. We're moving all around that process very, very quickly. And so it is a very random process. But the next step of this process that we're looking at right now is these building of ideas, a relationship between variables in one or two contexts. But the brain hasn't seen enough context yet to go, there's a general pattern to this for all trees. Right? We haven't got to that point yet of having that concept. So go and have a look at the book, read the chapter, and then we'll come back in the next video clip. We'll start looking at the notion of how do we build concepts from these ideas. Thank you very much.